We are not the newest lab in VBI, but close to it. We are in our 18th month. And also recognizing that we're the siesta panel for this meeting, we decided that we were going to turn this panel, its format and its content, over to our postdocs, who will come up now.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm here with Katie and Bianca, and as Sally mentioned, we are postdocs at SDAL, and we were asked to help put together today's presentations. And we thought we'd change things up a bit, and so we created a video to help introduce ourselves to you, and I hope you enjoy it. So please play.
Might want to turn the lights down in the front. Number 2.
Hi, I'm Katie Zemer. I'm a postdoc and a clinical psychologist. Welcome to SDAL.
Hi, I'm Bianca Pires. I'm also a postdoc and a computational social scientist here at SDAL. But given that most of VBI is out in Blacksburg, we thought it'd be fun to give you a little tour of our lab here in Arlington.
Hi, I'm Emily Malfino. I am also a postdoc here at SDAL. I'm a political scientist. Come along with us on a tour.
Describe SDAL in 5 words.
Katie, that's easy. It's fearless, fun, and forward-leaning.
Okay, Sally, so if you could come up with a metaphor for SDAL, the SDAL team, what would it be?
Well, I actually have 2. The first is data sleuthing, and the second is unconstrained model adaptation. And so let me unpack these for you a little bit. So in SDAL, we just are all about the data. We have no fear in ferreting out all sorts of data, sources of data that others wouldn't even imagine would be applicable to the research question at hand. We're unconstrained in our thinking about modeling approaches, and we draw on all the disciplines across our lab and across VBI as we approach our research. You could say what we're doing is putting transdisciplinary team science in action.
So Sally, what is your vision for the lab 5 years from now?
My vision for the lab 5 years from now is really a vision for Virginia Tech in the National Capital Region. I would like to see the National Capital Region of Virginia Tech be the urban analytics hub for the DC metro areas. And SDAL needs to be a significant driver to reach that goal. I want SDAL, our people, and their research to be central to the global conversation on the development of theory and methods for and the appropriate use of all data to improve society, from industrial innovation to health and social wellness of communities.
Stephanie, what's been your most memorable moment in SDAL?
We've had many memorable moments, but probably one of the most that I remember was in the fall of 2013, and we were a brand new lab, and we had all the executives from Arlington County come and talk to us. We had the police chief there, we had the fire chief there, we had the chief information officer, we had all the executives across Arlington. So we introduced our lab, and they got very, very excited. They wanted to immediately start working with us, and they started asking questions. They wanted to know about mapping the age of Arlington, and they wanted to know about the most frequent flyers out of their 911 calls. And they also wanted to know about greenhouse gas emissions from the county buildings. And so we were all excited, and everybody left on a high note. But after we left, I was like, oh my goodness, we've promised all this work, and we're a lab of 3.
Dave, describe your research in 1 sentence.
It's developing statistical methods to try to combine various different sources of data with different computational models so that we can use those models to make inferences and predictions in places where we just haven't seen them before.
So Dave, tell me, what type of projects do you see the lab working on in 5 years?
So in 5 years, I think we'll be much better at integrating the different talents and abilities that we have here at the lab. And I think we want to attack problems that needs all of us together to be working on these sorts of problems. So one of the areas I think would be looking at communities and how all the different interactions within a community, healthcare, parenting, childhood health and obesity, putting all this stuff together to figure out how can we make communities healthier would be a problem that I'd love to be working on in 5 years from now, and I think we have the talent and the skills here to be able to do that.
What's the most interesting thing you've learned since being at SDAL?
Well, because I had to think about this one. Because SDAL mixes people from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of disciplinary backgrounds. We all have been learning to overcome a lot of our prejudices. For me in particular, I have learned that not all banjo music is bad music.
Describe your research in one sentence.
In one sentence, privacy-protected federated data linkage.
What's the role of data science in SDAL?
Data science is really foundational to everything that we do at SDAL, as it is to any top analytics shop. Science is the systematic exploration of phenomena in the world, right? Where we're trying to explain and predict things. Well, we do that by observing things. We make observations. Well, today, these observations are taking the form of, in many cases, huge sets of data that have been collected for reasons other than the scientific endeavor that we're working on. Being able to take that data and systematically analyze it, clean it, and transform it to a state that can be used by our psychologists, our economists, our, sure, even somebody else, our statisticians, to answer society's questions. That's a very foundational aspect.
Describe your research in one sentence.
Research aims to study societal problems within the framework of social and economic networks by developing theoretical models, by conducting simulations to illustrate the differences between different models and their assumptions, by validating these models, collecting existing and traditional data sources in addition to the novel data sources, and by designing experiments.
What's been the most memorable moment at SDAL?
It was one of my first days in the building. I was in my office working, and I was hearing a lot of people walking in front of my office. We have a seminar room down the hall, and I saw that there were a lot of people formally dressed, and they were walking. They had some walkie-talkies, they had ear gadgets, and it looked like Men in Black. I heard that there was a governor visiting. Then I understood that I was actually in the capital region, not in Blacksburg anymore.
So Mark, describe your research in one sentence.
So my research is really figuring out how to apply psychology to big data sciences, really. I mean, so psychology fits in a lot of different ways, but I think it's an underutilized area. So there's a set of theories and methods that psychologists are really into and use and are really good at, but they're not really integrated into the big data framework at this point. And psychologists, actually, on the other side, they don't really think about big data at the same time. So there's room for not just understanding social issues using large unstructured data and psychological theory, but there's also room to test psychological theory in new ways using new kinds of data. So it goes both ways.
So what's the most interesting thing you've learned since being at SDAL?
That's easy. So this is the first time I've been around a lot of computer scientists who aren't psychologists, because there is actually a historical interplay between computer science and psychology proper. But what I've realized is there's a whole field of computer science approaches related to understanding, for example, sentiment of populations and natural language processing that doesn't really think much about psychology. They use psychological concepts. They don't use the actual theoretical concepts that the psychologists use. So the disconnect between the two, if you want to call it that, or I don't know what you call it, but it goes like this basically. And it's on both sides. So that was actually very surprising to me.
So Mark, what do you do to relax in between all the grant writing and research at SDAL?
Well, I'd say it this way. How do I not lose my mind? It's like this. There, now I feel better.
That's perfect.